Welcome to another episode of China Update, where I provide you guys with the most up-to-date political, economic and geostrategic analysis on the world's number 2 economy. My name is Tony. Let's jump in.
Okay, happy Thursday everybody. Let's continue our coverage of the unfolding Taiwan crisis as China begins its military and economic response towards the people of Taiwan. Quote, "The substantive PRC reaction to the visit is only just beginning. The military exercises around Taiwan will be unprecedented, encroach into Taiwan's territorial waters, and may include aircraft incursions into Taiwan airspace and missile flights over the island. The response may look a bit weak so far, and while I hope it stays that way, it is too early to make that conclusion. Taiwan will now start to bear the brunt of whatever penalties the PRC wants to impose, and I would caution against thinking that there will be a few days of military drills and then things go back to normal." End quote. We have more details on the PLA's live-fire military exercises, which officially started today, Thursday, indeed just a few hours ago, Thursday afternoon local time. The PLA said that it had conducted, quote, "precision strikes over the Taiwan Strait," end quote. We remember that shortly after Pelosi's plane landed on Tuesday, the People's Liberation Army announced that it would start a, quote, "targeted military operation," end quote, in 6 spots surrounding Taiwan, with some parts of the designated exercise areas penetrating close to the island, even within the internal waters. Quite an escalation. Taiwan's defense ministry has warned that the exercises put pressure on its ports, and indeed some analysts have expressed that the drills could amount to a blockade of Taiwan, and we all know that an island especially needs its ports. The exercises are taking place in some of the busiest shipping lanes in the world too, and will likely cause disruptions in the region, and especially to the world's number 3 economy, Japan. More on this shortly. The next few days remain very dangerous, but experts warn that we should manage our expectations. Quote, "Beijing is calculating what military maneuvers they can do to express their maximum displeasure and at the same time maintain China's ability to control the escalation dynamic. I don't see the connection in the invasion scenario. I think Beijing is still trying to avoid open conflict." End quote. Indeed, defense analysts remain confident that Taipei, Washington and Tokyo would know weeks in advance whether the PLA intended to launch an invasion attempt. Videos of tanks on Fujianese beaches appear to be more a show of strength for a domestic audience than anything else. Nevertheless, during periods of heightened danger and emotion, the risk of mistake or reckless actions is very real and can quickly escalate to unintended consequences. The story is very dynamic too and may transform or change over the next few days, which is why we will continue to follow this story very closely. Wednesday evening, the G7 released a joint statement expressing that the world's most powerful democracies were, quote, "concerned by recent and announced threatened actions by the People's Republic of China, particularly live-fire exercises and economic coercion, which risk unnecessary escalation." End quote. This brings us, of course, to Phase 2. Beijing also seeks to inflict economic pain on the Taiwanese as well. Since Monday night, the China Customs Administration has suspended imports of more than 2,000 of about 3,200 food products from Taiwan. This is a classic move from Beijing's diplomatic handbook, restricting access to its huge market against politically consequential and connected industries in a target country, with the hopes that these industries will put pressure on the government to come to a compromise with Beijing. Though with over 2,000 products suspended, this is more of a carpet bombing exercise to inflict widespread pain than a surgical strike. Quote, "In the past, China hit single products from the primary sector, such as specific fruit or fish. That way, they kept the overall macroeconomic impact on Taiwan limited, but could target regions where the Democratic Progressive Party is strong. But now they are broadening this immensely as they are targeting processed food. That gives them enormous extortion powers. This is probably only the beginning. We are certain that they will further step up their economic coercion measures." End quote. Meanwhile, international fund managers and investment strategists are warning that the escalating tension in this region will have huge effects on global markets. Quote, The issue will linger far longer than the market's attention span will allow, yet geostrategists are largely united in the view that we are still worryingly close to a potential fourth Taiwan Strait crisis. End quote. Investment strategists observe that the most obvious areas to watch with this unfolding Taiwan crisis include accelerating US-China decoupling. Quote, the official return of the US influence in Asia-Pacific will inevitably accelerate US-China decoupling. Given it's an evolving event, investors should brace for a test of nerves, which may implicate high market volatility in the near term. End quote. As well as pressure on already fragile supply chains in the region. The economies of Japan and South Korea are particularly vulnerable to these disruptions, and of course we're talking about a region that produces some of the world's most advanced semiconductors. Next up, Macau's economic devastation. Perhaps no People's Republic of China city has been more devastated by the pandemic and zero-COVID policy than the Macau Special Administrative Region. We remember in July last month, Macau's casinos, which employ a large part of the city's population and account for over 80% of local government revenue, were forced to close due to COVID shutdown rules. During the lockdowns, Goldman Sachs wrote that the casinos there were bleeding millions of dollars in cash every day. Now, according to data published this week by the Macau Gambling Inspection and Coordination Bureau, local gambling revenue dropped 95.3% in July, year on year. This is almost 99% lower than pre-pandemic levels in 2019, and the lowest level since 2003, when China's economy was almost one-tenth the size it is now. Before the pandemic, Macau's gambling market was 6 times the size of Nevada City in the United States, but in the first 6 months of this year, gambling revenue for the Las Vegas Strip alone shot past Macau. The former Portuguese colony has often been called China's Las Vegas, a gambling hub and travel destination for people in East Asia, but especially mainland Chinese and Hong Kong residents. But the double whammy of a mainland crackdown on cross-border gambling and the collapse of tourism due to COVID restrictions has been devastating for the economy. We remember back in June, the local authorities warned that surging unemployment posed serious social security issues for the city. Yesterday, Wednesday, with the Special Administrative Region reporting no new community transmissions of COVID-19 cases for 11 consecutive days, Macau's government said that people could enter the neighboring city of Zhuhai, the main entry port for tourists from the mainland, without quarantine. The previous day, on Tuesday, entertainment venues such as cinemas, beauty salons, karaoke bars, and swimming pools were allowed to reopen. While this is a modest improvement, the outlook for the city remains dire. S&P Global Ratings cut its Macau casino gross gambling revenue forecast for this year and for next year, and now only expects Macau's gambling this year to reach about 20% of its pre-pandemic level. Okay guys, if you enjoyed this episode of China Update, don't forget to hit the like button, and for anyone who wants to go the extra mile and help me continue making these videos every day, Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee links are in the description below. This is a tremendous help. That is today's episode of China Update. As always, thank you everybody for watching and all the ongoing support. I'll see you tomorrow.